You know, they say blood is thicker than water, but I learned the hard way that sometimes blood can run ice cold. My name is Margaret, and I'm 73 years old. What I'm about to tell you is something I never thought I'd share with anyone, let alone strangers on the internet. But maybe my story will help someone else who's going through what I went through. Maybe it'll give you the courage to stand up for yourself when the people who are supposed to love you treat you like garbage. I raised my daughter Sarah as a single mother after her father walked out on us when she was just 3 years old. I worked 2 jobs most of her childhood, cleaning offices at night and working at a diner during the day, just to make sure she had everything she needed. I sacrificed my own dreams, my own comfort, my own future, all for her. I never remarried, because I wanted to focus entirely on giving her the best life possible. Every penny I earned went toward her education, her clothes, her activities. When she wanted to take piano lessons, I picked up weekend shifts to pay for them. When she needed a car for college, I sold my grandmother's jewelry to make it happen. Sarah was always a bright kid, ambitious and driven. She got into a good college with partial scholarships, and I covered the rest by taking out loans against my house. I was so proud when she graduated with her business degree and landed a job at a marketing firm in the city. She met her husband, David, there, and they seemed happy. They had a beautiful wedding that I helped pay for, of course, because that's what mothers do. They bought a gorgeous house in an upscale neighborhood, had 2 beautiful children, Emma and Jake, and from the outside, everything looked perfect. But as the years went by, I started noticing changes in Sarah. She became distant, always too busy to visit or call. When I did see her, she seemed embarrassed by me, by my small house, by my second-hand clothes. She'd make comments about how I should update my style or fix up the house, but never offered to help. She started canceling our weekly dinners, then our monthly ones. The grandkids barely knew who I was, because she rarely brought them around. I tried to understand. I told myself she was just busy with her career and her family. I made excuses for her behavior because that's what you do when you love someone, unconditionally. But deep down, it hurt. It hurt more than I can possibly describe to watch the daughter I'd sacrificed everything for slowly push me out of her life. Then I got sick. It started with fatigue that I initially brushed off as old age catching up with me. But then came the dizzy spells, the confusion, the episodes where I'd forget simple things like where I put my keys or what day it was. After months of tests and doctor's appointments that I mostly attended alone, I was diagnosed with early-stage dementia. The doctor explained that while it was progressing slowly, I would eventually need more care and supervision. I called Sarah immediately after the appointment, my hands shaking as I dialed her number. When I told her about the diagnosis, there was this long pause on the other end of the line. Then she said, and I'll never forget these words, "Well, Mom, you can't live alone anymore. We need to find you a place, not come live with us, not we'll figure this out together. Just we need to find you a place," like I was some inconvenient problem that needed to be solved and filed away. Within 2 weeks, Sarah had found what she called a nice facility for me. When she drove me to see it, my heart sank. Pine Valley Care Center was one of those budget nursing homes that smelled like disinfectant and despair. The paint was peeling, the carpets were stained, and most of the residents I saw looked lost and forgotten. The staff seemed overworked and indifferent. My room would be shared with another woman, and the whole place felt more like a warehouse for discarded elderly people than a caring facility. "Mom, it's perfect for you," Sarah said, not meeting my eyes, "and it's affordable. Your Social Security and Medicare will cover most of it." Affordable. That's what my life had been reduced to. Not comfortable, not loving, not dignifying. Affordable. I begged her to reconsider. I told her I could still manage at home with some help, maybe a part-time caregiver. I promised I'd be careful, that I'd call if I needed anything, but she'd already made up her mind. She'd already signed the papers. She said it was for my own good and that she'd visit regularly. The lies people tell themselves to sleep at night. I moved into Pine Valley on a rainy Tuesday in October. Sarah helped me pack my belongings. Though help is generous, she mostly stood around checking her phone while I went through 73 years of memories, deciding what could fit into one small room. Most of my furniture, my photo albums, my mother's china, all of it had to go. Sarah said she'd store some things for me, but I could tell by her tone that she just wanted it all gone. The day I moved in, she gave me a quick hug and promised to visit soon. That was 8 months ago. She visited exactly 3 times in those 8 months, and each visit lasted less than an hour. She'd sit uncomfortably in the plastic chair beside my bed, make small talk about the weather, and then find some excuse to leave. The grandkids came once, and they looked terrified the entire time. Emma, who was 12, kept asking when we could go. Jake, who was 9, wouldn't even look at me. But here's the thing about being forgotten, about being written off. It gives you a lot of time to think. And what I thought about, during those long days and sleepless nights in that awful place, was how I'd spent my entire adult life being a doormat. How I'd let people walk all over me because I thought that's what love looked like. How I'd raised a daughter who saw me as disposable. And then I thought about my house. My little 2-bedroom house that I'd paid off years ago. The house where I'd raised Sarah, where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays, where I'd nursed her through chickenpox and helped her with homework at the kitchen table. The house that Sarah now wanted me to sell to pay for better care for myself, though we both knew she really just wanted the money. Sarah had been dropping hints for months about how I should sell the house. She'd say things like, "Mom, you're not using it, and the market is so good right now." She'd found a real estate agent and everything, just waiting for my signature. She figured that once I was settled in Pine Valley, I'd be grateful enough, or defeated enough, to just hand over the deed. But sitting in that depressing place, watching other forgotten elderly people shuffle through their days with no visitors, and no hope, something inside me snapped, or maybe something finally woke up. I realized that I still had power. I still had choices, and I still had that house. So I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I called a different real estate agent, one that Sarah didn't know. Her name was Linda, and she was probably around Sarah's age, but she treated me with respect and kindness that I hadn't experienced in months. When I explained what I wanted to do, she didn't question my mental capacity or suggest I was making a mistake. She listened, took notes, and got to work. You see, Sarah and David had been struggling financially for a while, though they tried to hide it. David had lost his job the previous year and had only recently found something new that paid significantly less. They were behind on their mortgage, though Sarah would never admit it to me. But Linda did some research, and the public records don't lie. They were 3 months behind and facing foreclosure proceedings. Their beautiful house in that upscale neighborhood, the one they were so proud of, the one they'd used to make me feel small and inadequate, it was about to be taken away from them. So I bought it. I used the equity from my house, the house Sarah wanted me to sell anyway, and I bought their house right out from under them, not to live in it, mind you. My dementia might be progressing, but I'm not delusional. I bought it to sell it. The look on Sarah's face when she got the foreclosure notice and discovered that her childhood home's owner had purchased her house was something I'll treasure forever. She called me in a panic, screaming and crying, asking how I could do such a thing to my own daughter. The same way you could dump your own mother in a cheap nursing home and forget about her, I said calmly. Very easily, it turns out. She came to see me that day, the first time in 2 months. She was furious, demanding that I sell the house back to her, that I fix this mess. She called me selfish, manipulative, cruel. She said I was being vindictive and that this wasn't like me. And you know what? She was right. This wasn't like me. The old me would have apologized, would have fixed everything, would have made it all better at my own expense. The old me would have sold my house and given her the money and been grateful that she visited me to take it. But I wasn't the old me anymore. Abandonment has a way of changing a person. Sarah, I said, looking directly into her eyes, you put me in this place and forgot about me. You've visited 3 times in 8 months. Your children don't even know who I am. You've treated me like I'm already dead. So now you can live with the consequences of treating your mother like garbage. She tried tears next, telling me about how hard things had been for them financially, how stressed David was, how the kids were struggling with the uncertainty. She painted this picture of herself as a victim of circumstances, as if her choices hadn't led to this moment. But I'd learned something important during my months in Pine Valley. Watching the other residents who never got visitors, who'd been similarly discarded by their families. I'd learned that being someone's mother doesn't mean you have to let them destroy you. Love shouldn't be a one-way street where you give everything and get nothing in return. That's who I listened to her sob story. And then I told her my plan. I had already listed their house with Linda, in that neighborhood, in that market. It would sell quickly and for a good price. After paying off their mortgage and the fees, there would still be a decent amount left over, enough for them to rent a modest apartment and start over. Enough for them to learn what it's like to lose the life you've built, to have to downsize your dreams, to feel vulnerable and scared about the future. But Mom, she pleaded, where will we live? What about the kids' schools? What about our friends, our community? I don't know, Sarah, I replied. Figure it out. Ask your friends for help. Move in with David's parents. Do what people do when they don't have a safety net. Learn what it's like to not have someone to catch you when you fall. She left that day without saying goodbye, slamming the door behind her. I didn't cry. I felt something I hadn't felt in years, powerful, in control, like I mattered. The house sold within 2 weeks. Multiple offers, bidding war, the whole thing. Linda handled everything perfectly, and I made sure Sarah knew every detail of the process. I wanted her to understand exactly how efficiently her security could be stripped away, just like she'd stripped away mine, with the money from the sale. After paying off my own house, I had enough to move myself out of Pine Valley and into a beautiful, assisted living community across town. Sunrise Manor is everything Pine Valley wasn't. It's clean, bright, and filled with activities and people who still have dignity. The staff treats residents like human beings instead of burdens. I have my own apartment with a small kitchen, and I can come and go as I please. I can have visitors anytime, though I don't get many. But here's the surprising part of this story. The part I didn't expect when I started down this path of what Sarah calls revenge. I started getting calls from other residents' families, people who'd heard about what I'd done through the gossip network that every small community has, adult children who'd been neglecting their parents, who'd dumped them in cheap facilities and moved on with their lives, suddenly got very interested in providing better care when they realized their inheritance might not be guaranteed. One woman, Dorothy, had been in Pine Valley for 2 years without a single visit from her son. After word spread about my situation, he suddenly appeared, concerned about her welfare, talking about moving her somewhere nicer. Funny how that works. Another man, Frank, whose daughter had been stealing his Social Security checks, suddenly found himself in a much better facility when his daughter realized he might have other options for his remaining assets. I'd accidentally started a revolution among the forgotten elderly, and it felt incredible. But back to Sarah. 4 months after I sold her house, I heard nothing from her. No calls, no visits, no communication at all. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that they'd moved into a rental apartment on the other side of town. David had to take a second job to make ends meet. The kids had to change schools. Sarah had to get a part-time job for the first time. Since Emma was born, they were learning what struggle felt like, what uncertainty felt like, what it meant to not have someone to bail you out when life got hard. Part of me felt guilty about this. The mother in me, the part that had sacrificed everything for Sarah for so many years, whispered that maybe I'd gone too far. Maybe I should give them some of the money, help them get back on their feet. Maybe I should be the bigger person and forgive. But then I'd remember those 8 months in Pine Valley. I'd remember the loneliness, the way the staff treated me like I was already gone, the way other residents looked when their families never came. I'd remember Sarah's face when she first brought me there, how relieved she looked to have solved the problem of me. And I'd remember that being the bigger person had gotten me exactly nowhere for 73 years. Then, about 6 months after the house sold, Sarah called me. Her voice was different, quieter, less demanding. She asked if she could come see me. And for the first time in our conversations since this all started, she said please. She came to Sunrise Manor on a Saturday afternoon, and I could see immediately that the stress of the past months had changed her. She looked tired, older, humbled in a way I'd never seen before. She wasn't the confident, dismissive woman who'd dumped me in Pine Valley. She was someone who'd learned what it felt like to lose everything. We sat in the common area, surrounded by other residents and their visiting families, and she started to cry. Not the manipulative tears from before, but real tears, the kind that come from genuine remorse. Mom, she said, I need to tell you something. I need to apologize. And for the first time in years, I believed she meant it. She told me about how hard the past months had been, but not in a way that asked for my pity or my help. She told me about having to explain to the kids why they had to move, why Daddy was working 2 jobs, why Mommy was stressed all the time. She told me about lying, awake at night thinking about how she'd treated me, about the example she'd set for her children. Emma asked me last week why we never visit Grandma, Sarah said, wiping her eyes. And I realized I didn't have an answer that didn't make me sound like a terrible person. I realized that I'd taught my children that elderly people are disposable, that family obligations are optional, that love has conditions. She paused, looking around at the other families visiting their elderly relatives. Families who made time, who showed up, who treated their parents with dignity. I don't know when I became someone who could abandon their own mother, she continued. I don't know when I started seeing you as a burden instead of the person who sacrificed everything for me. But I know that what you did, buying our house, selling it, it wasn't cruel. It was a mirror. It showed me exactly who I'd become. Now, I want to be clear here. This wasn't some magical moment where everything was forgiven and forgotten. Years of hurt and neglect don't disappear because someone finally says they're sorry. But it was a beginning. For the first time in our relationship, Sarah was seeing me as a person with feelings, with dignity, with the right to expect better treatment from her own daughter. I can't take back what I did to you, she said. I can't give you back those months in that awful place, or the years before that when I treated you like you didn't matter. But I want to try to do better. I want my children to know their grandmother. I want to learn how to be a daughter again. And you know what I told her? I told her that wanting to do better was a start, but that actions matter more than words. That if she really wanted to repair our relationship, it would take time and consistency and actual effort. That I wasn't going to be grateful just because she finally remembered I existed. I also told her that I wasn't giving her any money from the house sale. That money was mine, earned through decades of sacrifice and months of abandonment. If she wanted to rebuild her life, she'd have to do it the same way I'd had to rebuild mine, on her own. With her own effort and determination. She nodded, and I could see she understood. Maybe for the first time in her adult life, she understood that actions have consequences, that relationships require effort from both sides, that love isn't just something you receive, it's something you actively give. That was 8 months ago. Since then, Sarah has visited me every 2 weeks like clockwork. Not just quick, obligatory visits, but real visits, where we talk about our lives, our feelings, our relationship. She brings the kids, and I'm finally getting to know my grandchildren properly. Emma is intelligent and thoughtful, asking me questions about what life was like when I was young. Jake is funny and energetic, reminding me so much of Sarah at that age. David comes to sometimes, and he's apologized for his role in what happened. He admitted that he'd encouraged Sarah to put me in the cheapest place possible because they were already struggling financially and couldn't afford to help with a more expensive facility. He said he was ashamed of how they'd handled everything. They're still renting that apartment, still struggling financially, but they're making it work. Sarah has gotten a promotion at her part-time job, and David's second job has turned into something more stable. They're talking about maybe buying a smaller house in a few years, starting fresh with a more realistic understanding of their means. Most importantly, they're teaching their children different values than the ones Sarah had learned. Emma and Jake help with volunteer work at Sunrise Manor now, reading to residents who don't get many visitors. They're learning that elderly people are still people, still valuable, still deserving of respect and love. But here's the thing I really want you to understand, especially if you're dealing with family members who take you for granted or treat you poorly. What I did wasn't really about revenge, though I know that's how it looked from the outside. It was about self-respect. It was about finally understanding that I deserved better than being discarded and forgotten. For too many years, I'd confused being loving with being a doormat. I'd thought that being a good mother meant accepting whatever treatment my daughter gave me, being grateful for whatever scraps of attention she threw my way. I'd thought that unconditional love meant having no expectations, no boundaries, no requirements for how I was treated. But love without respect isn't really love at all. It's just habit, or obligation, or convenience. Real love requires effort from both people. It requires showing up, paying attention, making the other person feel valued and important. When I bought Sarah's house and sold it, I wasn't trying to destroy her life. I was trying to save my own dignity. I was trying to show her, and maybe more importantly show myself, that I still had value, that I still had power, that I still mattered. And you know what? It worked, not because it hurt her, but because it forced both of us to reevaluate our relationship. It forced her to see me as a real person with real feelings instead of just mom. The person who would always be there no matter how badly she treated me. And it forced me to see myself as someone worthy of love and respect. not just someone whose job was to give those things away without expecting anything in return. I'm not saying everyone should buy their child's house and sell it out from under them. That's not exactly a practical solution for most people. But I am saying that you have to advocate for yourself, especially when it comes to family. You have to have boundaries. You have to expect to be treated with basic human dignity, even by the people who are supposed to love you most. If you're watching this and you have elderly parents or relatives, please think about how you're treating them. Please consider that they're still full human beings with feelings and dignity and the need to feel valued. Please don't wait until they're gone to realize how much they meant to you. And if you're watching this and you're being taken for granted by your family, please know that you deserve better. You deserve to be treated with love and respect. You deserve to have your sacrifices acknowledged and appreciated. And you deserve to advocate for yourself when you're not getting those things. Age doesn't make you less valuable. Being someone's parent doesn't make you their servant. Having given someone life doesn't mean you have to accept whatever life they give you in return. I'm 74 now, and I'm happier than I've been in years. I live in a place where I'm treated with dignity. I have a relationship with my daughter that's based on mutual respect instead of one-sided obligation. I know my grandchildren, and they know me as a real person, not just as some distant figure they're supposed to visit out of duty. I also have friends here at Sunrise Manor, people who share my interests and my experiences. I've taken up painting again, something I loved when I was younger but gave up when Sarah was born because I thought I didn't have time for my own interests. I volunteer at the local library, helping other seniors learn to use computers. I feel useful, valued, alive. Most importantly, I've learned that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. It's never too late to demand better treatment. It's never too late to change the dynamics of your relationships, even ones that have been unhealthy for years. Sarah and I will never have the relationship we might have had if she'd never abandoned me in Pine Valley. There will always be scars from that time, wounds that have healed but left marks. But we have something now that we never had before: honesty. We talk about our feelings, our disappointments, our hopes for the future. We acknowledge the ways we've hurt each other instead of pretending everything is fine. And maybe that's better than the relationship we had before, when I pretended to be happy with scraps, and she pretended that was enough. Maybe it's better to have a relationship built on truth, even difficult truth, than one built on denial and resentment. I want to end by saying something to anyone out there who feels forgotten, discarded, or taken for granted by their family. You are not powerless. You are not without options. You are not required to accept mistreatment just because it comes from people who are supposed to love you. You have value. You have dignity. You have the right to expect better. And sometimes, the only way to get better is to stop accepting less. Don't let anyone convince you that standing up for yourself is selfish or vindictive. Don't let anyone tell you that you should be grateful for whatever attention they deign to give you. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for having expectations and boundaries. You taught your children how to treat people by how you allowed yourself to be treated. If you've been accepting poor treatment, you've been teaching them that's acceptable. But it's never too late to teach them something different. It's never too late to show them, and yourself, that you deserve love, respect, and dignity. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone out there find the courage to demand better for themselves. And if you're someone who's been taking an elderly relative for granted, I hope it opens your eyes before it's too late. Because someday, if you're lucky, you'll be old too. And the way you treat the elderly people in your life today is probably how you'll be treated when that day comes. Choose wisely.